Peter, good to see you. I mean, looking at my notes here, boy, you sound like a real bear. You think Dow 14,000 is a farce? Talk to us. Why?
Well, everybody acts like this is a big deal, but it's not that the stock market is gaining value. It's that our money is losing value. And so if you have debased currency and inflated currency, the price of everything goes up. I mean, stocks are no exception. If you go back to the last time the Dow was at 14,000 in 2007, gold was at $700 an ounce. Now it's at $1,600. So where's the stock market if you price it in gold? I think that's a much better barometer than pricing them in dollars that the Fed is running off the printing presses by the trillions.
So, Peter, does that mean that the absolute worst thing that you can be sitting on right now is cash?
Well, I've been saying that for a while, and I think the worst cash you could be sitting on is the dollar, although right now maybe that honor goes to the yen. And I think that if you look at it technically, the yen is probably going to keep falling for a while. But my feeling is that sometime in 2013, the Japanese are going to be pressured by the savers and the consumers. They're going to have an inflation problem on their hands. You're going to start to see consumer prices rising in a way that's going to bring pressure on the BOJ to actually start to tighten. And I think at that point, you might see a reversal in the yen, but you better watch out for those JGBs. And I think that's going to put a lot more pressure on the dollar when you see the Japanese actually tightening.
Boy, I tell you.
Yeah, that's a big call, Peter, because the JGB market, it's so huge. I mean, the ramifications of a turnaround, an exit from that market are absolutely staggering. I mean, what do you see happening? And do you think that selling would also ripple over into treasuries and bonds?
Well, of course it's going to, at least in the Treasury. But look, the 10-year JGB yields about 80 basis points. The government says we want inflation to be at least 2%. Well, why would you knowingly own an asset that yields less than 1% when inflation is going to be at least 2%? It could be a lot higher than that. This is going to backfire on Japan, and the Japanese have to import a tremendous amount of things. They have to import all their energy, a lot of raw materials. Prices are going to go through the roof. And, not only is the yen going down against the dollar, but, of course, it goes down against the RMB. There's a lot of imports coming in from there. So the Japanese people are going to be poorer. If the goal of this monetary policy is to create purchasing power in Japan, it's going to achieve the opposite. They're destroying purchasing power by destroying the value of the yen. I mean, a much sounder policy would be a strong currency and higher interest rates. But, America doesn't have a monopoly on stupidity. We've managed to export some of that to the Japanese. That's one of the only things we export, by the way, other than inflation.
Listen, Peter, I mean, what you're saying, I like it because it's scary and it wakes people up. And, we like to hear stuff like this at 6 in the morning. But, I mean, let's take a step back. How on earth are we going to get there? Japan is going to be suffering potentially, you think, this year from an inflation problem? I mean, what the government is trying to do right now is to double inflation, or at least a target from 1% to 2%. How do you do that within a single year? I mean, what are they going to have to do to get that to happen?
It's easy. Anybody can create inflation. You just debase your currency. The secret is to have a strong currency. That's much harder because you actually have to produce stuff. You actually have to be fiscally responsible.
How much is the yen going to get debased?
Destroying your currency is easy.
Yeah. How much do you see the yen getting debased this year then? Yeah, that's 95. People are calling 112.
I mean, looking
at
a short-term chart, I mean, the yen looks like it could fall. But it's going straight down right now, and a lot of traders are obviously making easy money shorting the yen against everything.
So give me a number.
But at some point, there's going to be a backlash because the Japanese have been insulated from the effects of inflation because the yen has been perceived as a safe haven. But all this talk about the threats of deflation, that's all political nonsense. Falling consumer prices are good.
How bad could the yen get? Give me a number. How bad could the yen get this year then?
How low could it go? I mean, right now, what is it, 93 to the dollar? I don't know. It can go 100, 110, 120, but at some point it's going to have to reverse. I mean, I think that the yen is ultimately going a lot higher, but it's going to go lower first. I mean, it's a trade. There's momentum there. And it's going to go down but it's going to have a sharp reversal. So if you're short in the yen, you got to be careful because at some point there's going to be a big rise. Because I don't think we're going to get all the cheap money. There's the promise that in 2014 they're going to print all this money and buy up treasuries and JGBs. They might not be able to. They might have to tighten before that cheap money policy ever sees the light of day.
You know, Peter, everyone talks about the unintended consequences of quantitative easing, but nobody seems to be that worried about it. Is that what you see happening, an exit from the safe haven bond markets? And what would it do to the global economy?
Well, eventually people are going to find out that there's no safety in paper, and there's no safety in sovereign credit. Quantitative easing is inflation. It's a euphemism to describe the process of creating money out of thin air, and it is not good for the economy. It's destructive. What it does is enable governments to go deeper into debt. It enables a nation to postpone the pain of fixing its problems. But in postponing the pain, it makes the problems worse. And I think eventually the world is going to wake up that it's not just about getting your money back, but getting your purchasing power back. And when people focus on that and they see the risks in the U.S. dollar or other currencies, they're not going to want to own paper. They're going to want to own something real. They're going to want to own gold and silver. They're going to want to own equities. But it's not going to be indiscriminate. They're going to want to own the right companies in the right countries and in the right currencies.
Peter, what do you make of why this is just Standard & Poor's? Why not Moody's? Why not Fitch?
Well, I think the government is being dishonest and hypocritical. You know, the only reason I believe they're going after Standard & Poor's for not downgrading mortgages is because they downgraded the U.S. Treasury. I mean, the only difference between S&P and Moody's or Fitch is that Moody's and Fitch still have AAA ratings on U.S. credit and S&P does not. But the bottom line is, I think they're making the same mistakes with U.S. Treasuries that they did with mortgages. If you go back to 2005, 2006, I'm on record as saying that the bonds that S&P and Moody's were rating AAA were rated F, and they were going to fail, and that investors were going to lose all their money, that these bonds were going to go to zero. This was obvious to me, but I think at the time, the whole country was deluded, including all the customers who bought those AAA rated crap that was being sold and rated by Moody's and S&P. They should have known this stuff was no good either. The whole country was drunk on the cheap money that was being poured by the Federal Reserve. Everybody was under the delusion that housing prices would never fall.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
so sure, in hindsight, now that they see what happens, you can see that the ratings were nonsense. But I was pointing it out at the time. But I think the government is being vindictive here in going after S&P. I don't think it's justice.
Peter, very quickly, 10 seconds, tell us, what do you like? What should investors be buying right now, if not treasuries?
Gold, silver, hard assets, commodities, agriculture. Look at stocks in emerging markets, good companies, good balance sheets, good earnings that are servicing countries where the income is going to be gaining, where currencies are going to be appreciating in value. Stay away from these overly indebted nations like the U.S. that are going to pay its creditors back with printing press money.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate your time and your insight. Peter Schiff there at Euro Pacific Capital.